Under the fluorescent lights of the International Atomic Energy Agency headquarters in Vienna, Rafael Grossi stands once again before a cluster of microphones. The questions are familiar, the tension palpable. Another report has surfaced, and once again, Iran's nuclear program is at the center of international scrutiny. This time, the conversation is not about hypothetical enrichment levels or theoretical cooperation frameworks. It is about access or the lack of it. In a press conference earlier this week, Grossi confirmed that despite months of dialogue and repeated visits, inspectors have not been granted full access to several critical nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan. His tone, calm but unmistakably stern, reflected a growing frustration within the agency. He warned that Iran must seriously improve cooperation with the IAEA to avoid heightened tensions with the West. Those words, first published in the Financial Times and later echoed in global media, reverberated through diplomatic circles from Vienna to Washington and Tehran. The latest wave of inspections followed one of the most dramatic escalations in the Middle East this year, the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. A confrontation that saw the first direct air and cyber strikes between the two states. During that conflict, U.S. forces reportedly joined limited operations targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure, citing concerns over potential weaponization. Among the targets were the enrichment facilities at Natanz, the deeply buried site at Fordow, and auxiliary operations near Isfahan. Iranian officials claimed the attacks caused only superficial damage, but satellite imagery told a more complicated story: destroyed electrical substations, collapsed tunnels, and smoke plumes stretching across central Iran. For the IAEA, the aftermath presented a dangerous vacuum. Inspectors were permitted to visit some peripheral locations, but denied entry to the core installations, the very ones previously bombed. Grossi later told the agency's Board of Governors that the denial of access significantly hampers the IAEA's ability to verify the status of nuclear material and equipment. His words carried an unspoken warning. Without transparency, speculation would fill the void. Inside Iran, the response was swift and defiant. President Masoud Pezeshkian, elected in July 2024 after a closely contested vote, took to state television on Sunday to address the nation. Standing at a podium adorned with the Iranian flag, he declared, "Destroying buildings and factories will not create a problem for us. We will rebuild, and with greater strength." It was the first time Pezeshkian had publicly commented on the strikes since the conflict's end. His statement, deliberate and emphatic, sought to project resilience, a message to both domestic audiences and foreign adversaries. He added that Iran's nuclear program will continue to serve peaceful purposes and insisted that the country's right to nuclear technology is non-negotiable. The rhetoric is not new. Since taking office, Pezeshkian has positioned himself as a pragmatic reformist. But on the nuclear file, he has followed the same hardline consensus shared by Iran's clerical establishment. Nuclear science is a matter of national pride. Behind the scenes, however, diplomats suggest growing concern within Tehran about renewed sanctions or even another round of covert strikes. Iran's economy, already battered by inflation and currency instability, can ill afford further isolation. Still, to the outside world, the message remains consistent. Iran will not be intimidated. According to a confidential IAEA report circulated in late May 2025, Iran continues to accumulate uranium enriched up to 60% purity, far beyond the 3.67% limit established under the 2015 nuclear deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. The report described this as a matter of serious concern, noting that the stockpile now exceeds several hundred kilograms. That level of enrichment is technically short of weapons grade, but close enough to shorten what experts call Iran's breakout time, the period required to produce sufficient fissile material for one nuclear device. For months, Grossi has appealed to Iran to restore full access to IAEA monitoring equipment, much of which was disabled or removed after Tehran curtailed cooperation in 2023. Though inspectors have since returned to the country, access to the most sensitive areas remains blocked. There is still time, but not much, Grossi warned during a briefing in September. He called on Tehran to permit continuous monitoring and to clarify outstanding questions about uranium traces found at undeclared sites. Western diplomats described the situation as deeply unsustainable, one European envoy told reporters in Vienna. Without transparency, there can be no trust, and without trust, diplomacy collapses. Among the facilities now off limits, the Natanz complex remains the most symbolically charged. Once hailed by Iran as the beating heart of its peaceful nuclear research, Natanz has become a recurring flashpoint between Tehran and its adversaries. In April 2021, a cyber attack widely attributed to Israel caused a massive power outage there, damaging thousands of centrifuges. The incident prompted Iran to accelerate its enrichment efforts, a defiant response that reignited tensions with the West. 4 years later, in June 2025, Natanz again found itself in the crosshairs, this time from the sky. The IAEA later confirmed that parts of the facility's above-ground section had been destroyed, though the underground centrifuge halls appeared intact. The agency's immediate concern was not political, but safety-related. A senior IAEA official warned that military strikes on nuclear infrastructure could create radiological hazards beyond Iran's borders. Grossi echoed that sentiment, urging maximum restraint by all sides. Today, much of Natanz lies in ruins, but rebuilding work is reportedly underway. Analysts say Iran's focus has shifted to its underground network, including the fortified Fordow plant, which is designed to resist airstrikes. Fordow, buried deep under the mountains near Qom, was once a secret installation exposed by Western intelligence in 2009. It has since been at the core of Western fears because of its potential for rapid enrichment. The site's location beneath hundreds of meters of rock makes it nearly impossible to destroy without using bunker-buster weapons, which in turn raises the risk of escalation. The third site of concern, Isfahan, serves as a conversion and research center where uranium is processed before enrichment. After the June 2025 strikes, local media reported explosions and fires near the city's industrial outskirts. Iranian authorities dismissed the reports as enemy propaganda. Yet, according to satellite analysis by independent researchers, the Isfahan facility sustained visible structural damage. The IAEA has requested site access multiple times since, with no success. For Tehran, the issue goes beyond inspections or nuclear limits. It touches on sovereignty. Iranian officials argue that Western powers, particularly the United States, use the IAEA as a political instrument rather than a neutral regulator. In remarks to the Iranian parliament, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi accused Washington of weaponizing international institutions and insisted that Iran's scientific progress will not be dictated by foreign pressure. This narrative resonates deeply with ordinary Iranians, many of whom view the nuclear program as a symbol of technological self-reliance. In public rallies following the attacks, banners read, "Science is our strength, and we rebuild, we resist." Such messaging is vital for Pezeshkian's government, which faces internal criticism from hardliners who accuse him of being too accommodating to Western diplomats. The president's recent remarks, "We will rebuild and with greater strength," served not only as a statement of defiance, but also as a bid to shore up his political legitimacy. In Washington, officials described the situation as deeply troubling. A senior U.S. State Department spokesperson said the administration was consulting with allies to ensure Iran's nuclear activities remain peaceful and verifiable. European governments echoed the concern. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, urged Iran to restore full IAEA access and avoid actions that undermine diplomatic progress. Israel, meanwhile, has taken a harder tone. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that Israel will never allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. His government continues to reserve the right to act unilaterally if it deems Iran's activities a direct threat. Russia and China, by contrast, have defended Iran's right to pursue civilian nuclear energy under the NPT, though both have called for restraint and dialogue. The diplomatic divide underscores a broader geopolitical reality. The Iranian nuclear question remains as polarizing as ever within the IAEA itself. The challenge is as much political as technical. The agency must navigate between verification duties and the delicate diplomacy that underpins global nuclear governance. Grossi's leadership has been marked by an insistence on transparency paired with an almost relentless optimism that dialogue can prevail. Privately, however, senior officials admit that patience is wearing thin. One insider described the current atmosphere as tense but not hopeless, adding, "Every time we get close to a breakthrough, something happens again. Strike, a political shift, a denial of access. Despite the frustrations, the IAEA continues to send inspectors to secondary sites and has maintained remote monitoring at certain facilities through data collection devices. But without physical access to the core enrichment halls, the agency cannot independently confirm Iran's current production levels. For Pezeshkian, the nuclear standoff coincides with daunting domestic challenges. Inflation hovers around 40%, the real remains volatile, and unemployment among the youth has reached record highs. Analysts suggest that his defiance on nuclear issues is partly a political calculation, a way to project strength in a climate of economic fragility. By standing up to the West, Pezeshkian buys himself time at home, said an Iranian political scientist based in Europe. It's a risky strategy, but one that plays well with the revolutionary base. Yet that same posture risks alienating Western governments, just as back-channel talks about limited sanctions relief were beginning to gain traction earlier this year. At IAEA headquarters, time is measured in quarterly reports and diplomatic deadlines. The next major Board of Governors meeting is scheduled for December, and by then, Grossi expects concrete progress. Iran knows what it must do, he told reporters. Transparency and cooperation are not optional, they are obligations. If Tehran fails to comply, member states may call for a formal censure, a step that could reopen the door to United Nations sanctions suspended under the JCPOA. For now, Grossi has refrained from confrontation, opting instead for engagement. He has requested another visit to Tehran before the end of the year, hoping to secure commitments on inspection access. Whether Iran accepts remains uncertain. Beyond politics, there are practical dangers. The strikes in June 2025 highlighted just how vulnerable nuclear sites can be in active conflict zones. In a statement following those attacks, the IAEA warned that military actions near nuclear facilities pose serious risks to human health and the environment. Experts say that even limited damage to cooling systems or containment structures could release radioactive material. Although no such incident has been confirmed in Iran, the possibility underscores the need for international monitoring. Neighbouring countries, including Iraq and Turkey, have quietly expressed concern to the UN about the potential fallout, both literal and diplomatic, of another round of hostilities. The broader question now confronting world powers is how to contain the crisis without collapsing what remains of the nuclear accord. Talks between Iran and European mediators have been intermittent since early 2025. Washington insists that any new framework must include verifiable limits on enrichment and missile development. Tehran counters that sanctions must first be lifted. Neither side seems willing to move first. For Grossi, who describes himself as a technician, not a politician, the impasse is deeply frustrating. His mandate is scientific verification, yet every measurement he seeks has become entangled in geopolitics. Still, he remains measured in public appearances, aware that the credibility of the IAEA rests on neutrality. Our job is to tell the world what we see, not what we wish to see, he once said during an interview earlier this year. As the year draws to a close, the Iranian nuclear issue stands at a precarious juncture. Rebuilding at bombed facilities continues. Inspectors await clearance. Diplomats exchange carefully worded statements. For now, the world watches and waits. In Tehran, reconstruction cranes rise over the desert landscape where the Natanz complex once gleamed. State television shows workers welding steel beams and pouring concrete, a visual metaphor for resilience. In Vienna, Grossi's team prepares another report, compiling satellite data, environmental samples, and diplomatic notes, a technical document with enormous political weight. In between lies uncertainty. Will cooperation resume, or will the standoff deepen into a new era of confrontation? The stakes are high. Iran remains the only non-nuclear weapons state currently enriching uranium to near weapons-grade levels under international safeguards. For many, that fact alone keeps the world on edge. Yet, amid the mistrust, there remains a sliver of hope. Diplomats recall that even at the height of past crises, from North Korea's withdrawal from the NPT to the standoffs of the early 2000s, dialogue never fully died. Grossi, ever the pragmatist, seems to cling to that precedent. As he told reporters recently, diplomacy may be slow, but it is still faster than war.